Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of The Comment Show. As you all know, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we talk about random bullshit. And then on Thursday, I take some of your comments on that random bullshit and spout some more random bullshit. So today we're going to be talking about the 3 videos that came out this week. There was also a 4th video, kind of bitching about my personal problems with YouTube that I figured not really worthy including in the comment show. It was just me being a little bitch. So we're going to talk more about the topics that had a bit more meat to them than me being upset about YouTube and demonetizing my shit. So the best way to respond to my problems with YouTube demonetization is to go to my Patreon and give me money. So if you're not doing that, I don't care. I love you guys. Anyways, today we're going to be starting on Monday when we talked about the untimely death of vid.me. And there really wasn't a lot that anybody had to say that kind of disagreed with me in terms of this video. It was pretty much everybody was on the same page that it kind of sucked. It was bullshit, but the question that inevitably came up, and I'm going to pick from Girl Sunbathing Under a Post left this comment. They said, there's no way a competitor can hope to be profitable when YouTube itself isn't even profitable. And this is kind of the crux of the entire issue, right? None of these sites can ever hope to be successful if they don't have the huge financial backing of a company like Google that can take the quarters and quarters of losses that YouTube has to burden under the weight of hosting all of this fucking video. If Google has to take millions of dollars in losses that are offset by things like search and AdSense that kind of keeps the company itself afloat, how can like 2 random dudes who start up a site ever hope to compete? The interesting thing is that we need to really change how video is hosted, or at least tackle it from a different perspective. And this is why I wanted to keep a lookout for a site called BitChute. So BitChute is a video competitor to YouTube. It's been around for a while, but the interesting thing about BitChute is that it uses peer-to-peer technology to host its videos rather than hosting them all natively on servers. So this is interesting for 2 reasons. 1, cuts down massively on server costs, because I'm assuming if it works anything like torrents, you're just hosting the torrent file, and then when you go to stream the video that you want to watch, instead of, hosting it or downloading it from a local server that BitChute has, it's instead basically torrenting it in real time and streaming the download of the torrent. So this means as BitChute's user base grows and you can spread that peer-to-peer kind of stuff around all your user base, your site should improve in performance as there are more people kind of seeding and leeching videos, as opposed to worrying about congestion when you have central servers that can be flooded under an influx of lots of new users. I don't know a whole hell of a lot about torrents, technology, and peer-to-peer in general, so if I'm talking out of my ass and saying a bunch of shit, feel free to let me know in the comments. But from my neophyte understanding of the basics of the technology of peer-to-peer, that's kind of how I think it works. So that's pretty cool in terms of they can shoulder the burden of having fuck tons of video because they're not technically hosting the videos themselves, so it's not going to be nearly as expensive to maintain server costs if you're hosting torrent files and not video files. So I haven't used the site a lot. It doesn't look very pretty right now. It looks like some nerds made it and not some designers, and it might need a few coats of paint before it's ready for prime time. But I have made an account on BitChute. I will link it in the description if I remember to finish it before uploading this video. And they have a really good option, I guess, for importing YouTube. You just link your YouTube account and it'll mirror all the shit you upload to YouTube. So that's pretty cool. Always nice to have a backup. Now I have another place now that VidMe's dead that I can upload all my shit that gets blocked and demonetized here on YouTube. Thanks, Google. So let's move on to Tuesday. On Tuesday, we talked about how political parties ruin politics. This was a fun video. There's some interesting comments in here. And the first comment I wanted to spotlight is from Max Watson, and they left a very long comment in response of it. It basically boiled down to, if you got rid of 2 political parties, what would you essentially do? You really only had 2 options in their perspective. 1 was either to let anyone vote regardless of how educated they are, or 2, only let educated people to vote. And they go on to list some problems with that. Letting anybody vote means that they'll only glean a surface level of understanding, and the second one's pretty obvious. You have a whole giant portion of your electorate basically barred from voting, and there's some human rights issues there. So let's discuss. My counterpoint to this, I suppose, would be, how is point 1 let anyone vote regardless of how educated they are any different from how it is now? I don't know shit about the vast majority of issues, but I can go in and vote. As long as I'm registered, I can go in and vote. I would say that if we got rid of political parties and we let everyone vote still, I would argue that two things would probably happen. Number one, less people would vote, because it's not a sport anymore and you have to be interested in it. And if you're interested in it and you have to do research, tons of people are just going to opt out of voting entirely because they don't have the intellectual autopilot to rely on. If they don't know that there's a good guy and a bad guy and there's just two guys and they got to make a decision, tons and tons of fucking people are just going to opt out of voting entirely. So if a ton of people opt out of voting entirely, the people that are left are actually going to do the research. They're going to be people who say, okay, these are these two candidates. What do they have to say? What are their perspectives on the issues? So even if you do a cursory kind of basic Google search on the issue, because you don't have the good guy, bad guy dynamic of political parties, of Democrat and Republican, I feel that small group of people left who are actually interested in the political discussion are obviously going to be way more motivated to do the research, figure out the issues, and we'd have a smaller but more informed electorate. Now, we're not forcing the electorate to be smaller by forcing people to be educated. We're basically sifting out the people who are uninterested in the democratic process and allowing people who are interested to come in and make their decisions based on the issues and not on their sports team. And that kind of also answers the other question I wanted to bring up, which is from Samiro Piera. Oh my god, I probably butchered that. How do you make a political system work without political parties? And I basically just answered that. Everybody in the country would have a right to vote. And it's up to you to know what the fuck you're talking about. Because if you don't have your team telling you what you should and shouldn't believe, you're not just going to walk into a voting booth and be like, so there's guy A and there's guy B. I don't really know what the fuck they have to say or what they mean. I guess I'm just going to flip a coin? No, if you want to actually be part of the process, you're going to do a little bit of homework. And even if you're getting your information from the news, right? And you're letting the news spit out their perspective at you, the news, the interesting thing about getting rid of political parties is you introduce multiple points of failure as opposed to a single point of failure. And in this regard, multiple points of failure is actually preferable to a single point of failure. What I mean by points of failure is that when you have Democrats versus Republicans, you inevitably internalize the identity as Democrat or Republican. So if I really identify as a liberal, any attack on liberalism is attack on me. And so I'm always going to side with liberals, and I'm always going to ignore any good points Republicans make because it's attacking my identity to say anything anti-liberal. That's a single point of failure. There's one blocking point. Anything anti-liberal, I immediately cast aside. But if we have multiple points of failure with no political parties, and we say all issues are just on the table for people to discuss. Now there's multiple points of failure. I can identify with a single issue, such as abortion or gay marriage, and be like, anything anti-abortion, anything anti-gay marriage, I'm inherently against. But that's just one issue. If there's no political parties to rally behind these issues, now I examine every issue individually, and yeah, eventually if there's one I'm really passionate about, I'm going to start blocking things out. But there's only one issue that gets lost in that political self-identity. Now I have multiple issues and multiple points where I have to build up different personal perspectives, and there becomes this amalgamation of every issue that becomes basically my personal biases, as opposed to having it be all distilled down into one political identity that is a political party. So I think even though there's still going to be that human nature of people identifying with their beliefs, because it's not pre-prescribed to you based on a team, you're still going to get better end results. So let's move on to Wednesday, where we talked about Overwatch's brilliant marketing strategy and the deal with loot boxes. And the two really big comments that came up in this were basically saying that this is the same comment I got the last time I made an Overwatch video, how Overwatch didn't popularize loot boxes. We had Maxord say, Overwatch popularized loot boxes, you mean MOBAs? And then I had Yarny say, aren't they basing this all off of Team Fortress 2? And you're both correct. MOBAs and Team Fortress 2 both kind of popularized the loot box and customizing your avatar with aesthetic things. These ideas have been floating around before. I think the difference between something like League of Legends and Team Fortress 2 versus Overwatch is that both of those games, at least when they started introducing those things, were free-to-play games. This kind of idea of loot boxes and in-app purchases and things like that. That's very common in the free game space. That's, going all the way back to like 2008 with the beginning of the App Store and like bringing in like iPhone games, and then having that kind of free-to-play market proliferate into PC games and console games. You had a free game, you want to monetize it, you had in-app purchases. Overwatch was, I think, the first big one, like not the first, but the first one that really gained a huge mainstream foothold that was a retail price $59.99 game that had these loot boxes in there and was successful doing so. And that's what caused all these other big companies, Activision, Blizzard's parent company, EA, Ubisoft, to take notice and be like, oh, we can take these free-to-play aspects, put them in a retail game, and as long as we market it well enough, these dumb motherfuckers don't care. And so they took that ball and ran with it, and it went from purely cosmetics to in-game perks, and that leads to Star Wars Battlefront 2 and where we are today. So, yeah, it's not the first game to do it, but I think it's the first game that really set the tone in the mainstream market by being a big, massive AAA game that cost full retail price, had these features in there, and did really well regardless. It didn't get a ton of blowback. And basically set the stage for the abuses we're seeing today in the modern AAA market. So that's all I really got. This was a short comment show. Not a whole lot to discuss, but that's all I got. Thank you for leaving comments, and I will talk to you guys on Monday.